Hello there, welcome to HFY Quantum Pro. Here, helping one another makes the universe smarter. So, what we are waiting for? Let's begin our story.
The last person awake on Sublevel 9 was always Ravi Sengupta, not because he was dedicated, not because he loved his work, but because the pay was better for night shifts, and Ravi needed every credit he could squeeze out of this floating library they called the Athenaeum, a research station orbiting a dead star, filled with artifacts from civilizations that had turned to dust long before humans figured out fire. And Ravi's job was to sit in the cold, badly lit archive rooms and catalog the things nobody else wanted to touch. Tonight, it was a slab at a thick piece of dark stone about the size of a dining table, covered in symbols that twisted and curved in ways that made his eyes water if he stared too long. It had arrived 2 days ago from a monastery belonging to the Pale Chorus, a secretive order of alien monks from the Dremathai species. They had guarded ruins of the Star Kings for thousands of years. The Star Kings themselves had been gone for roughly 800,000 years. Nobody knew what they looked like. Nobody knew why they vanished. All they left behind were stones like this one, covered in a language that no translator, no computer, and no living mind had ever been able to decode. Ravi ran his fingers along the grooves of the symbols. They were cold, colder than the stone should have been. He yawned and leaned closer, squinting at a cluster of glyphs near the center. His lips moved without thinking, the way they always did when he was trying to sound something out. It was a habit from childhood, from the years he spent teaching himself to read in 3 different colony dialects because his school could not afford language software, that he mumbled a sound, something that felt like it matched the shape of the first glyph. Then another, then a third. The slab lit up. Pale gold light poured from every groove and symbol on the stone. Ravi stumbled backward, knocking over his chair. The glyphs lifted off the surface, peeling away from the stone like burning paper caught in an updraft. They floated in the air around him, spinning slowly, and the room filled with a low hum that he felt in his teeth and his bones and the back of his skull. He opened his mouth to scream for help. The glyphs rushed into him. They poured through his eyes, his mouth, his skin. It felt like swallowing sunlight. It felt like drowning in music. Every nerve in his body fired at once. And for one impossible second, Ravi understood everything. The weight of the station around him, the spin of the dead star outside, the heartbeat of every living creature within 100 meters. He could feel the structure of reality itself, humming like a plucked string. Then everything went black, that he woke up in the medical bay with a headache that felt like someone had parked a shuttle inside his skull. The lights were too bright. The air tasted like metal. And Director Oalani was standing over him, all 7 feet of her, her insectoid eyes reflecting the glow of the medical screens. "The slab is blank," she said. "No greeting. No worms. Just facts." That was Oalani. "Every glyph is gone. Our scanners show they are no longer on the stone. They are no longer anywhere in the archive." "Do you want to explain that?" Ravi tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. "I touched it. I tried to read it. I did not mean to do anything." "You spoke it," said a rough voice from the corner. Fen, the station's head of security. A garai, broad, scaled, built like something designed to survive a building collapse. He had arms like tree trunks and a face that looked like it had never smiled. The audio logs picked it up. "You spoke sounds matching the glyph patterns." "Then it all went to hell." "I was just sounding it out," Ravi said weakly. "Nobody sounds out Star King script," Oalani said. "Nobody can. 47 species have tried for millennia. The phonetic structures do not map to any known vocal system." Ravi did not have an answer for that. He lay back down and closed his eyes, hoping they would leave him alone. But even with his eyes shut, something was different. He could hear a hum, faint, constant everywhere. In the walls, in the medical equipment, in Oalani's breathing, in the slow, heavy pulse of Fenn's blood. The whole station was vibrating at a frequency he had never noticed before, and now he could not stop hearing it. It sounded like the universe was whispering, and it was whispering in words he almost knew. "Am I dying?" he asked. "Your neural scans are abnormal," Oalani said. "But you are not dying. Not yet. I have contacted the Pale Chorus to inform them of the incident." "And?" Oolani paused. It was the first time Ravi had ever seen her hesitate. They are already coming. A full delegation, led by their warden. How fast did they respond? They did not respond. Ravi. They departed before we opened the slab. Before we even told them it had arrived safely. She leaned closer, and for the first time, he saw something in her compound eyes that might have been fear. They knew this was going to happen. Ravi stared at the ceiling. The hum grew louder, not in his ears, in his chest, in his blood. Something ancient and enormous had crawled inside him, and it was settling him like it planned to stay till he was 29 years old, underpaid, exhausted, and completely alone on a station full of aliens who barely noticed he existed. And something that had been silent for 800,000 years had just started speaking again. Through him. 3 days after the slab went blank, Ravi broke a door by talking to it, but he had not meant to. He was walking back from the cafeteria, carrying a tray of food he barely wanted to eat, when the sliding panel to his quarters jammed. It happened all the time on the Athenaeum. The station was old and half the systems needed replacing. Normally, he would kick it or call maintenance. But he was tired and frustrated, and without thinking, he muttered a single word under his breath. IT was not a word from any language he knew. It came from somewhere deep inside his chest, rising up through his throat like a bubble from the bottom of a lake. It felt natural. It felt inevitable. And the moment it left his lips, the door did not slide open. It came apart. Every molecule separated from every other molecule in perfect silence, and the solid metal panel became a shimmering cloud of particles that reformed into an open archway. Ravi stood there holding his food tray, staring at what used to be a door. Behind him, 2 Bravani researchers dropped their tablets and ran. Within an hour, the corridor was sealed off. Finn stood guard outside with his arms crossed, and his expression even more unpleasant than usual. He had been assigned as Ravi's personal shadow, and he was not happy about it. "You are a danger," Finn said flatly when Ravi tried to explain. "I'm not here to protect you. I am here to protect everyone else from you. I just wanted to open my door. You erased your door. There is a difference." Ravi could not argue with that. The pale chorus delegation arrived the next morning. 6 monks in pale gray robes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. And at their center, carried on a floating platform because his legs had stopped working centuries ago, was Warden Suthadat. He was ancient. That was the first thing Ravi noticed. The Dremathi were a long-lived species, but Sutha looked like he had outlived his own body's willingness to keep going. His skin was paper-thin and almost translucent. His eyes were covered in milky cataracts. He was blind, but when his platform stopped in front of Ravi, the old monk turned his head with a precision that made it clear he did not need eyes to see. "So," Sutha said. His voice was dry and sharp, like cracking ice. "This is what the language chose. A human." He said the word human the way someone might say insect. Oolani stepped forward. "Warden, the Athenaeum is neutral territory. Whatever your intentions, Ravi is under our jurisdiction and our protection." "Protection," Sutha repeated. "You cannot protect anyone from what is inside him. You do not even understand what it is." "Then explain it," Oolani said. Sutha was silent for a long moment. Then he asked everyone to leave except Ravi. They stood alone in the corridor. Or rather, Ravi stood. Sutha sat on his platform and stared at Ravi with those blind, clouded eyes, and Ravi felt more exposed than he had ever felt in his life. "The language has not chosen a speaker in over 300,000 years, Sutha said. "The last species it chose was the Veliath. They were brilliant, disciplined, powerful. They lasted 41 years before the language consumed them. They burned their own worlds in their madness. 2 billion dead." Ravi's mouth went dry. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you need to understand what is growing inside you. It is not a gift. It is not a blessing. It is the voice of the Star Kings themselves, and it does not care about you. It will use you until you are hollow, and then it will wait another 100,000 years for the next fool who touches a slab in the middle of the night." "Can I give it back?" "No." "Can it be removed?" "No." "Then what am I supposed to do?" Sutha leaned forward. "You're supposed to die quietly and take as few others with you as possible. That is what the Pale Chorus is prepared for. That is what we expected. What we did not expect was this. He gestured at Ravi with one thin, trembling hand. A human. A species barely 90 years into the galactic community. You have no psionic ability. No neural discipline. No genetic enhancement. You are soft, emotional, and chaotic. You are the worst possible vessel for the most dangerous force in the known universe. Ravi felt something hot and tight in his chest. Not anger exactly. Something more complicated. The hum inside him shifted, deepened, responded to his feelings in a way that made the lights in the corridor flicker. I did not ask for this, Ravi said. That is irrelevant. The question is not whether you asked for it. The question is whether you can survive it. And based on everything I know about your species, the answer is no. Ravi looked at the old monk for a long time. The hum in his chest was louder now. He could feel it pressing against the inside of his ribs, warm and vast and patient. You said the language is alive, Ravi said slowly. That it chose me? Yes. Then maybe it knows something you do not. Sudha did not reply, but something shifted in his expression. Not softness, something closer to doubt. That night, Oalani called Ravi to her office. Her face was grim. Station communications had intercepted an encrypted transmission leaving the Athenaeum. Someone on board had sent a message to Admiral Ginn of the Bravani Hegemony, one of the most powerful military commanders in the galaxy. The message was short. It said, "The language has a new speaker. He is human. He is here, somewhere in the dark between stars." A war fleet was already turning toward them. The monks tried to teach Ravi by making him sit still. For 3 days straight, they brought him to a sealed meditation chamber deep inside the station, sat him on a cold metal floor, and told him to empty his mind. No thoughts, no feelings, no memories, just silence. That was how every previous speaker had been trained, they said. The language responds to stillness. The language needs calm. Ravi lasted about 40 minutes the first session before he started fidgeting. By the second day, he was pacing the chamber like a caged animal. By the third day, he was arguing with the monks, who refused to argue back, which made everything worse. "This is not working," Ravi said to Sudha after another failed session. "Of course it is not working," Sudha replied. "You are human. Your species cannot sit still for 5 minutes without inventing a new problem to worry about. Then why are you teaching me this way?" "Because it is the only way." But it was not the only way. Ravi just did not know that yet. The breakthrough came from the last person he expected. Finn had been standing guard outside the meditation chamber every day, arms crossed, saying nothing. But on the third evening, after the monks had shuffled away in their gray robes and Ravi was sitting alone in the corridor with his head in his hands, the big Gurai sat down beside him. The floor groaned under his weight. "Your monks are idiots," Finn said. Ravi looked up. "Excuse me. They're trying to make you into something you are not. They want you quiet and empty because that is how the Viliath did it. The Viliath were cold-blooded thinkers with 3 brains and no emotions. You have 1 brain and more emotions than you know what to do with. Their method was never going to work for you. Do you have a better idea?" Finn was quiet for a moment. Then he said something Ravi did not expect. "When I was young, I trained as an honor guard on the Gurai homeworld. We were taught to fight with rage. Not blind rage, directed rage. You feel everything, but you choose where it goes. You do not suppress the fire. You aim it. The monks said suppression is the only safe path. The monks have been guarding a dead language for 10,000 years, and they have never once heard it speak. Maybe they do not know as much as they think." Ravi thought about that. The next morning, he went back to the meditation chamber alone. No monks, no instructions, just him and the hum that never stopped, the vibration of the language living inside his bones. He sat down, closed his eyes, and instead of trying to empty his mind, he filled it. He thought about his mother. She had been a factory worker on the colony world, pulling double shifts 6 days a week to keep food on the table. She could not read. She could not write. But every night during storm season, when the wind screamed outside their thin walls and the power went out, she would hold Ravi in her lap and sing. The same song every time. A simple melody with words she made up as she went. And in that small, dark room, with the world falling apart outside, Ravi felt safe. He felt warm. He felt known. He held that feeling in his chest, and he spoke. The Star King words came without effort, rising through him like breath. And the room changed. The cold metal walls softened. The harsh light turned golden, and every living being within 50 meters of the chamber felt it. A warmth, a safety, a sense of being held by something vast and gentle. Two Bravani researchers in the corridor above stopped walking and stood still, tears forming in eyes that were not built for crying. A Dremathai monk dropped his prayer beads. Even Finn, standing guard outside, pressed one heavy hand against the wall and bowed his head. Soothe felt it too. He was in his quarters, 3 levels away, and he felt it wash over him like a tide. For one heartbeat, the ancient monk who had spent centuries preparing for death felt like a child again. Safe. Loved. He would never admit it. But his hands were shaking when it passed. Oalani found Ravi afterward. She was carrying a data tablet filled with research she had been doing in secret for days. I have been studying the historical records of every species the language has chosen, she said. All of them were selected for power, psionic ability, neurological precision, cold logic. The language always chose the strongest minds. And humans are not strong minds, Ravi said. Humans are messy minds, Oalani corrected. You feel fear and hope at the same time. You grieve and laugh in the same hour. You hold contradictions inside yourselves without breaking. No other species does this. I believe the language changed. I believe it stopped looking for the strongest mind and started looking for the most flexible one. Ravi stared at her. You think it evolved? I think it learned from its mistakes. Every previous speaker broke because they could not handle the emotional weight of a language. It is not just words and power. It is the accumulated feeling of an entire civilization. 800,000 years of memory and emotion. A logical mind snaps under that weight. But a human mind, a mind built to carry impossible contradictions, might survive it. Before Ravi could respond, the station shuddered. Alarms hung. Oalani's communicator screamed with incoming alerts. Admiral Gen's fleet had arrived. 47 warships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, and the Admiral's voice echoed through every speaker on the station. Surrender the human. You have 12 hours. Ravi walked to the observation deck and stared out at the distant lights of the fleet. Dozens of ships, each one capable of tearing the Athenaeum apart. Finn stood beside him, silent and solid. What do you want to do? Finn asked. Ravi did not answer right away. The hum inside him was changing. It was not pressing against him anymore. It was settling, waiting, like it trusted him to choose. For the first time since the slab lit up, the language did not feel like a curse. It felt like a question, and Ravi was starting to think he might have an answer. 12 hours is not a long time when you're waiting to die. The Athenaeum had no weapons. It was a research station built for scholars and archivists, not soldiers. Its hull could withstand micrometeorites and solar radiation, but a single volley from Admiral Gen's war fleet would crack it open like an egg. Everyone on board knew this. The panic was immediate and ugly. Shuttles launched within the first hour. Private vessels belonging to wealthy researchers and visiting diplomats peeled away from the docking rings and scattered into the dark, running for the nearest hyperspace lanes. Oalani let them go. She could not stop them, and she would not waste time trying. The people who stayed were either too stubborn or too poor to leave. Ravi was both. Soothe called an assembly of the pale chorus monks in the lower chapel. Ravi was not invited, but Finn told him what happened. The monks had begun preparing for something called the Silence, a ritual death. All 6 monks would stop their own hearts simultaneously, taking whatever knowledge they carried about the Star Kings into oblivion. It was their failsafe. If the language could not be protected, it would be buried with them. Ravi found Soothe in the chapel afterward. The old monk was alone, sitting on his floating platform in the dim light, his blind eyes aimed at nothing. You're going to kill yourself and your monks, Ravi said. That is your plan. It is not a plan. It is a duty. The language must not fall into the hands of conqueror. Admiral Gen would use it to build weapons. He would burn worlds. So instead you just give up. We do not give up. We prevent catastrophe by dying. Yes. Ravi felt the anger rise in his chest before he could stop it. The language stirred with it, and the floor beneath his feet cracked. A thin line split the metal from one wall to the other. Soothe felt the vibration and stiffened. Control yourself, Soothe hissed. No, Ravi said. You have spent your whole life waiting for the language to wake up. It did. It chose someone. And your response is to roll over and die because it did not choose the person you wanted. It chose a human, a child species with no discipline and no understanding of what they carry. Then teach me. Actually teach me. Not your meditation nonsense, designed for species with ice in their veins. Teach me like I am what I am. Teach me like I am human. Soothe said nothing, but he did not look away. The station shook again. Gin had started firing low-yield shots across the hall. Not enough to breach it, just enough to remind everyone inside that he could. Warning shots. The clock was running out. That night, Finn came to Robbie's quarters. The Garai stood in the doorway for a long time before he spoke. I was not always a mercenary, Finn said quietly. I was an honor guard. I was given one duty: protect the third daughter of the Garai High Council during her pilgrimage to the outer colonies. I failed. Raiders hit our convoy. I fought. I killed 11 of them. But while I was fighting, they took her through the back corridor. I never saw her again. Ravi waited. I was exiled, stripped of my name, my rank, my family crest. I have spent 15 years doing security work on stations like this because it is all I am qualified for, and because every morning I wake up and remember that I was not where I needed to be when it mattered. Finn looked at Ravi with those heavy, golden eyes. I will not fail again. Whatever happens tomorrow, I stand with you. Ravi nodded. He did not trust himself to speak. The 12 hours expired at dawn, station time. Gin sent a boarding party. 30 elite soldiers in armored suits, cutting through the docking corridor with plasma torches. The station's internal alarm screamed. The remaining civilians huddled in the intersections. Finn gathered a small group of volunteers, mostly maintenance workers and a handful of Garai traders who still remembered how to fight, and they met the boarding party at the main junction. IT was not enough. Gin's soldiers were trained killers. They pushed through the barricade in minutes. Ravi was standing behind the last line when the soldiers broke through. He could see them coming down the corridor, weapons raised, visors glowing. And behind them, projected on a screen mounted on the wall, was Admiral Gin's face. Watching, smiling. The language surged inside Ravi like a wave that he did not speak to attack. He spoke to protect that a single word left his mouth and the corridor changed. The walls bent inward and fused together. The floor rippled and rose. Every opening, every gap, every crack sealed itself shut like a living thing closing a wound. The soldiers hit a solid wall of reformed metal and stopped dead. Their cutting tools sparked against a surface that was no longer just steel, but something denser, something the language had rewritten at the atomic level that Gin's soldiers fired. The wall absorbed it. They fired again. Nothing done on the screen. Gin's smile vanished. Then Ravi collapsed. Blood poured from his nose and ears. His vision blurred. He felt Finn catch him before he hit the ground, those massive arms holding him like he weighed nothing. The medical team swarmed in, shouting readings that sounded very bad. His nervous system was being rewritten, they said. His cells were changing. If he kept using the language at this intensity, he would be dead within days. But the wall held. The soldiers could not get through. And as Ravi slipped into unconsciousness, the language spoke through him one last time. A single phrase, quiet and clear, in a voice that was not quite his own. The station's translators could not decode it. But the pale chorus monks heard it and fell to their knees. Sud's blind eyes went wide. That phrase, he whispered, that has not been spoken since the Star Kings walked among the living. What does it mean? Oh, Alani asked. Sud's voice trembled. It is a summons. The language is calling them home. Ravi woke to walls covered in words he had written in his sleep. Star King glyphs spiraled across every surface of the medical bay. The ceiling, the floor, the equipment panels, even the glass of the observation window. They glowed faintly, a soft gold that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. The medical staff had moved to the far side of the room and were watching him with a mixture of fear and wonder. Soothe sat beside the bed, not on his floating platform, in a chair. Someone had helped him into it, and the effort of sitting upright without support was visible in the way his thin body trembled. But he was there, close, and when Ravi's eyes opened, the old monk spoke first. "I owe you an apology," Soothe said. It sounded like it cost him something to say it. "I've spent my entire life studying the language from the outside. I thought I understood it. I did not." Ravi's throat was raw. "What changed your mind?" "The phrase you spoke before you lost consciousness. It is from the deepest layer of Star King records. We have fragments of it carved into the oldest ruins, the ones even we are forbidden to enter. It is called the Return, and it has not been spoken by any living voice in 800,000 years. What does it mean?" Soothe folded his hands in his lap. "The Star Kings did not die, Ravi. They did not go extinct. They transcended. They poured their consciousness into the language itself. Every word, every glyph, every sound is a fragment of who they were. Their memories, their knowledge, their feelings. The language is not a tool they left behind. It is them, all of them, an entire civilization living inside the structure of reality." Ravi stared at the glyphs on the walls. They pulsed gently, as if breathing. And when a speaker is chosen, Soothe continued, it means they have decided to act, to reach back into the physical universe through a living voice. This has only happened twice in recorded history. Both times, the galaxy was on the edge of a collapse so total that all complex life was at risk. Was the collapse now? Oolani answered from the doorway. She had been listening. She walked in carrying a data tablet loaded with intelligence reports she had been gathering for weeks. "It is not one thing. It is everything. The Bravani hegemony is building weapons capable of cracking planets. The Garai clans are fracturing into civil war. 3 separate species in the Outer Rim are developing biological agents designed to target specific genetic codes. Every major power in the galaxy is arming. Every alliance is breaking." She set the tablet down. "We are not at the edge of a war. We are at the edge of the last war. The one nobody survives." The station shuddered. Gin had lost patience. The low-yield warning shots had stopped. Real ordnance was hitting the outer hull now. Oolani's communicator lit up with damage reports. Hull breach on level 12. Fire suppression failing on level 8. The Athenaeum was dying. Ravi pulled himself out of the bed. His legs almost gave out. Fen appeared at his side instantly, one massive hand steadying him. "You cannot do this again," Fen said. "The doctor said your body is rewriting itself. One more surge, and your nervous system could shut down permanently. If Gin breaches the station, everyone dies anyway." Fen had no answer for that. Ravi walked to the main communications array on level 3. Oolani's engineers had been working around the clock to restore it after Gin jammed the long-range signals. It was partially functional now, enough to broadcast within the system. Maybe further, if the signal was strong enough. Ravi sat down in front of the transmitter. The monks followed him. Fen stood at his back. Oolani watched from the doorway. "I do not know if this will work," Ravi said. "Neither did the Star Kings," Soothe replied. "They did it anyway." Ravi closed his eyes. He reached inside himself, past the fear, past the pain, past the hum that had been living in his bones since the night the slab lit up. He reached all the way down to the place where the language lived, and he found it waiting for him. Not demanding, not forcing, waiting, like a friend who had been patient long enough. He opened his mouth and spoke that IT was not a single word this time. It was a river. The Star King language poured out of him in a flowing, sustained passage that lasted minutes. The transmitter caught it and broadcast it on every frequency. The signal punched through Gin's, jamming like it was not there. It spread across the system, then the sector, then further, carried by something that had nothing to do with technology, and everyone who heard it did not hear words. They heard feeling, they felt what Ravi felt. The loneliness of a boy on a colony world too poor for proper schools. The ache of being invisible. The stubborn, burning, impossible hope that things could be better. that people could be better, that the space between souls was not empty, but full of something waiting to be spoken aloud. It was not a command. It was not a weapon. It was a hand extended in the dark. On Gin's flagship, weapons powered down. Not by order. Soldiers simply stopped. Gunners lifted their hands from their controls. Gin screamed commands, but nobody moved. Because for one moment, every being on that fleet remembered what it felt like to be small and scared and hoping someone would reach out. The transmission ended. Ravi fell. Finn caught him, but Ravi was smiling. And across the galaxy, on ships and stations and worlds beyond counting, 1,000 species stood still and felt something they could not name. Something old and vast and gentle. Something that sounded impossibly, wonderfully like a human voice. 6 months later, the Athenaeum was the busiest place in the galaxy. Ships arrived daily from every corner of known space. Bravani diplomats, Garai clan leaders, Dramathai scholars. Species that had not spoken to each other in centuries were sending representatives to a research station orbiting a dead star, because something had changed in the galaxy and nobody could quite explain what it was, but everyone agreed it had started here. Ravi was at the center of it all, and he hated every minute of it. Not the work. The work was fine. He still cataloged artifacts. He still spent his evenings in the archive rooms, surrounded by relics from dead civilizations, doing the quiet, careful work he had always loved. But now there were cameras, delegations, politicians who wanted to shake his hand and be seen standing next to the human who had spoken the Star King language and made half the galaxy cry. He refused every title they tried to give him. Ambassador, prophet, voice of the Star Kings. He told them he was an archivist. He told them he was nobody. They did not listen, but he kept saying it anyway. The language had settled inside him like a second heartbeat. It no longer overwhelmed him because he no longer fought it. He spoke small phrases every day, naturally, the way someone might hum a song without thinking. A cracked wall in the lower levels sealed itself when he muttered a word in passing. A dispute between two delegations in the main hall calmed when he spoke a quiet sentence that made everyone in the room feel heard. A sick Bravani child who had been struggling to breathe for days took her first clear breath when Ravi sat beside her bed and sang a melody that was half human lullaby and half Star King prayer. He never used the language as a weapon. He never used it for politics. He refused every request from every government that wanted him to speak on their behalf, enforce their treaties, or intimidate their rivals. The language was not a tool for power, he said. It was a bridge, and bridges do not choose sides. Admiral Gin was court-martialed by his own government 3 months after the siege. The Bravani hegemony, shaken to its foundations by what its soldiers had felt during the transmission, entered peace negotiations for the first time in decades. The process was slow and messy and full of setbacks, but it was happening. That was enough. Soothe and the Pale Chorus transformed their order. The ancient monasteries that had been sealed for millennia were opened, not as museums, as gathering places. Anyone could come. Anyone could sit in the presence of the Star King ruins and listen to the faint echo that lived in the stone. Most heard nothing. Some heard a whisper. A few wept without knowing why. Soothe oversaw it all with the quiet intensity of a man who had spent his entire life guarding a door and finally understood that it was meant to be open. But he told Ravi, once, in a rare moment of honesty, that he had been wrong about humans. Ravi told him he had not been wrong to be careful. They never spoke about it again, but something shifted between them. Not friendship exactly. Something older. Respect earned the hard way. Fenn stayed. He never explained why. When reporters asked him, he shrugged and said he was still doing security work. When Oalani asked him, he said the pay was acceptable. But late one evening, when Ravi asked him directly, the big Gurai was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I spent 15 years looking for something worth standing next to. I found it. He did not say anything else. He did not need to point one night. When the station was quiet and most of the delegations had retired, Ravi walked alone through the deepest level of the archive, down past the cataloged relics and the preserved fragments and the sealed vaults, down to the small, cold room where it had all started. The slab was still there, still blank. still cold. The wall behind it was empty, just bare metal, the same as every other wall on the station. Ravi placed his hand on it. Duddy spoke. Not loudly, not with force or urgency or fear. Just a quiet stream of words in a language that had been silent for 800,000 years. And under his palm, new glyphs appeared. They grew out of the metal like frost forming on glass, delicate and bright, and unlike anything the Pale Chorus had ever recorded. Because they were not old words. They were new ones. The language was growing. For the first time since the Star Kings transcended, someone was adding to it. Oolani found him there an hour later. She looked at the glyphs and then at Ravi. "What do they say?" she asked. Ravi read them aloud, and then he translated. "We were the first to speak. You will not be the last. The word lives. Carry it forward." Oolani stood beside him in the quiet, and neither of them spoke for a long time. Far away, on a small colony world at the edge of explored space, a young alien girl sat on her bedroom floor, watching a recording of Ravi's transmission on a cracked screen. She did not understand the words. Her species had no translation for what he had said, but she felt it, the warmth, the reaching, the stubborn, impossible belief that connection was worth fighting for. She closed her eyes and hummed along with the sound of his voice, and deep inside her, in a place no scanner would ever find, something very old and very patient began to listen. The galaxy had always measured power in ships and weapons and territory. It took one human, one tired archivist with no gifts and no rank, to remind them that the greatest power in the universe had always been the simplest one, the ability to speak and be understood, to reach across the void and say, "You are not alone."